Good morning, everyone. This is today's webinar under the title Bridging Innovation and Compliance. And we've set this up to introduce the enterprise PLM solution based on the 3D Experience platform dedicated for device development for medical device products as well as diagnostics products. So I will be your host. My name is Peter Salen. I'm a sales executive in the life science domain at Technia. I've been working with product development since 96 or so, and I've been working for the last 4 years with life science, introducing new solutions to medical device, pharmaceutical and diagnostics organizations. This session today is the first session in a series of webinars which we will run all through the autumn, winter and spring. So it will be an introduction to the topic, and it will be followed on by additional webinars on specific topics related to selected areas on product development for devices. Additionally, it will be recorded, so whatever is presented here will be present after completion today as a movie, which of course you can re-listen to or review at any time, and of course also share with your colleagues. At the end of the session today, there will be a Q&A session for any questions. So you can always raise your hand and raise questions, but I will pick them up at the end of the session. And at the end, you will also receive my contact details if there are topics you would like to discuss offline. But let's get started. So the 3 objectives with this session. The first one is to introduce PLM for device development. What is it, and how does it bridge innovation and compliance? How do we actually use this to combine the product development with the requirements for compliance, which is really one of the core challenges for device development. And after introducing this, we will briefly touch on the topic, why it matters to you and if it does. So these are the 3 items covered today. If we look at the implementations of PLM in medical device development, it's typically, or all implementations are fitted to specific business needs and business processes for a particular device. So of course they will vary depending on what kind of class of device it is, what kind of content, if it contains software, if it contains fluids or a paste, of course depending on what kind of category of product it is and what kind of development cycle we have and what kind of development organization have. But what's common to all implementations are always 3 items, and first one is to have an accurate representation of your product, and at any point in time know what's the one version of the truth, what is the exact status of our products at the current time. And that covers the different product contents, as well as the sequence in which it's manufactured, as well as its work instructions, its controlling documents, its SOPs, its evidence and test records for compliance status. And that's always covered in all implementations. The other part is the compliance status. As you can see here, is at any point in time, we should be able to know what is the accurate compliance status. Are we green, which means that we can release the product, or are we pending status, which means that we are awaiting input from a supplier or from our own organization before we can say that this product is fine for sales release or regulatory release? Or do we have a compliance issue, and where is it? And if so, can we drill down and see exactly what it is? And the third aspect is to know the exact status of our development projects. Where are we with regards to design controls? What has been achieved? Are we on time? And what's our development schedule? So these are the three views on our product development process, which we typically like to know to be on top of our product development for medical devices. Otherwise, for PLM, it builds on the standard motives for establishing one version of the truth for product development. In reality, and still a reality today, is that a lot of the communication and a lot of the decisions made during product development is done in a non-captured way. It might be done over a coffee break or in a discussion. A lot of information is covered in, and decisions are covered in emails. It might be covered in fax messages or in written letters. But what we're doing with PLM in any industry and for any purpose is, of course, to put this information together into one common backbone, which is the product lifecycle management repository. And typically for device development, we're of course covering the product and the bill of material, so a breakdown of a product and a product model. But we also need to represent the product family, because that's where we connect our submissions or CE mark registrations. We connect it to our SKUs or our sales items to be able to say that yes, we can release this specific product on a particular market, and we do have achieved the submission status, so we can do that. And then we also want to connect it with the product, so that we are at any point in time can say that this is the status of product development, these are the completed tasks, and these are the completed deliverables. So to give you a hint, an idea of what this might look like, I'll go into a demo environment, and we will now view the 3D experience platform, also known as Innovia. In this case, I'm a development engineer, and this might be one of my views which I have when I enter the system. In this case, we can see a stage gate process with different gates. So we have an initial phase, which is brief definition. We then come to a gate, which we have reviewed and passed. And we can see that as of right now, we are in the analysis phase. So if I'm at any point in time would like to understand exactly where I am, I select on my project, I select on my or a recent stage, and I can then clearly see that, okay, these deliverables have been completed. It's a brief review, it's a brief analysis, and some acceptance criteria. And I can see that there have been deliverables checked in for these tasks. To see exactly where I am at the time being, I'll select on the current phase, and I can see that yes, the first task, competition analysis, perhaps a market analysis, has been completed, and there's something checked in. And I can see that the next task here is the usage definition, and it's currently in review. So there's typically something checked in which can be viewed. So this is if I want to be in control of my development project, this is how I can see and view exactly where I am. And it covers the different stages and gates and checks on deliverables for those. For each and every phase, I have tasks and their deliverables. In this case, I also like to understand exactly what's my compliance status at the time being. So I'll switch context, and I'm using the compass icon to the left here. I select on my different apps which I have. So these are different processes supported or different functions supported. So I can see here that I have my different access to processes for complaints and MCRs. I have access to applications for engineering changes. But in this case, I want to review compliance status. So I select on compliance reporting, which keeps me in the same context, the Optimum product and development project. But here I switch to the product. And I can see here it's a 3D scanner of some sort for medical device purposes. I can see what's the current life cycle stage. So I can see that it's an early creation. And I can see what are on relevant tasks at the time being. And I can see that there are approvals and signatures required for that. But in this case, I want to understand the compliance status. So I go to the compliance BOM. And this will give me, among many other regulatory domains, I will have a bottom-up bill of material or product view on the compliance status for different levels. So on the top level for this 3D scanner, I can see that it's for many different regulatory domains, it has a red status, meaning it's not compliant. And I can also drill down into the structure and see that there are subsystems here which are non-compliant. There might be different reasons for that. So in this case, on the battery, it's unreported, which means that this one is sourced from an external party, and that party needs to deliver either a materials declaration or some type testing reports or test records, for example, and perhaps a certificate for this component. And we have requested this information, but we have not yet received it. If we drill down on the camera here, we can see that that's one of the reasons why it's non-compliant. And if we expand that one, we can see that it has a lens, and it's the lens which is non-compliant. If I select on the camera lens, I can further drill down, and that's really the essence here. Because of course I can see the top level node and see that on an overall basis we're non-compliant. But since I have access here to my complete development platform, the complete product development repository, I can always drill down to understand the exact detail for non-compliance. So in this case, I'll have a look at the compliance properties, because that's where the analysis of compliance is made. And I can drill down to the compliance results. And here it's clear that the reason to non-compliance is that it's a material and it's a lead compound. So according to RoHS, I cannot exceed a certain amount of lead contents of this product. And since I'm not meeting that criteria, I get a non-compliant status of this part. And with current European legislation, this means that if I'm not compliant with RoHS, I'm not compliant with my CE mark registration. So that's the reason why we're not compliant with regards to the CE mark at the current design. So that's a typical example how we first viewed the status in the product development project. Then we switched into product mode where we view the compliance status, and here we can drill down and see the exact reason to non-compliance at current with this particular revision of the product. And typically, what is new with the 3D Experience platform is that I am having the complete development setup in this environment. So this user interface might be familiar for users using Innovia, which is the enterprise PLM platform from Dassault Systems. But if I switch the compass to 3D mode, I have my different 3D modeling tools here. So here I have all my CATIA features for CATIA editing. So I can go directly from my compliance status to working in my 3D environment. Or if I want to work, as might be common with medical device development, in a similar fashion with SolidWorks, I select on SolidWorks, and there I have my modeling tools for SolidWorks. So this is to give you a hint on what is the functionality for device development in Innovia. Just to give you an idea of look and feel and the functionality. Before leaving, I'll also like to show you, and I'll probably have to log in again. So let's make this correct this time. So this is just to show you role-based login, which is true for this environment. So depending on who I am, I'll get different entry views and access to different functionality within the system. In this case, I'm a quality leader and my name is David. I log in and then I have a totally different entry view. In this case, I'm having the standard view on complaints. Case in my role, I want to understand quality status, quality issues, and potentially safety issues. And here I have relevant information on current complaints on the project and on the products where I'm involved. Typical information which is displayed here are the different complaints, of course, with any detail on the contents. Essence of having complaints information here in the PLM backbone is of course to have the immediate connection to the product. So whenever I'm reviewing a complaint and it is immediately connected to a product, I have that information always at the tip of my fingers. So I can drill down into the product or the relevant product from this view to understand what kind of impact will this complaint have and what is the development status of this particular product. So with this, any design engineer or anyone involved in product development will have the same version of the truth, the same version of information related to the same product information at the same time. Okay. So that was a brief introduction to what is or could PLM for device development be and look like and feel like. I will give you some background on what has shaped this functionality and the supported processes where we are today. So common within the organizations where we've implemented PLM are facts, issues, and pains where development organizations or people in device development spent quite a lot of administrative time for updating quality and compliance information. The disconnect was typically in the change information on products and making sure that quality systems and compliance information was up to date with the development organization, and at any point in time be audit ready to make sure that we can meet any scrutiny or any filing or submission at any point in time. A common issue is also, or was also, that tests were performed quite late in development, and they were based on the wrong requirements, or that test which should have been performed was not performed, even though the requirements or the standards or the regulatory areas were well defined and known. And it's not uncommon that issues were detected, but often very late in the development phase or release cycle. So this led to quality issues, of course, and inadequate procedures for submissions, or wrong, incorrect information applied in submissions. So these were common issues in different parts in the organization. Solutions for those: early evaluation of design to build, making sure that we're always up to date with design and work instructions. So quite familiar topics with regards to PLM. Also, what we built was order population on the DHF and DMR to make sure that whenever we have a deliverable in our stage gate, we're also populating the DHF, assuming that it's the right kind of deliverable. We also sync the EBOM to the MBOM and to the DMR, so it's all built on the same master. This continues with the different measures we made to make sure that we are in sync. And over time, this led to different processes supported in previously then Enovia, and now in the 3D Experience platform. And today there are 7 main processes. It's device requirement excellence, which is requirements management. We have complete traceability from requirement to test, which is typically used for regulatory requirements and making sure that we are compliant at any certain point in time. We have device development excellence, which is support for design controls, and the automatic DHF population. We also have the device master record excellence, which allows you to synchronize your early conceptual BOMs, say from a CAD design to an EBOM, to an MBOM, and to the DMR, to have a full sync between the different product representations at any point in time. We have device sustainability excellence, which is full support for conflict minerals, REACH, and RoHS analysis as part of your compliance portfolio. And this comes natural with the introduction of RoHS as a prerequisite for the CE mark. We have device quality excellence, which is support for the different quality processes required according to QSR or according to 13485. So COPPA, NCR, complaints, audits, supplier audits, the standard quality processes, but in this case built into PLM. The reason for building those into the PLM backbone is, of course, to make them available to anyone in the development project in their natural environment where they store their products and designs, so that everyone can access the quality information when needed. Natural contents for any device developing organization is control documents. This is a library of templates for different device development documents. It might be functional specifications or requirement functional specs. It might be different records for different tests. It might be approvals of any kind. And we have the device regulatory excellence, which covers the submissions of different kinds and connect those to the deliverables of the development projects to make sure that your technical file or your dossier or your 510Ks or any submission is in sync with whatever is the set of deliverables generated in any development project or any change initiative within your organization. Within our customer base, there are specific processes implemented, but the ones highlighted here are the ones which are provided out of the box by Dassault Systems when the software is installed from the box. So this is standard practices within Innovia. They're all covered under the name License to Cure for Medical Device. There are continuously additional processes released, and the 3 ones which are coming up in a nearer future is portfolio excellence, supply chain excellence, and risk management excellence. But more on those later. So, to give you an idea of what's the functionality. For design controls, we had a look at the StageGate project in the system previously, which was briefly demonstrated. The kind of functionality needed is starting off in product creation from templates. So we set up different templates for different product development scenarios. A product development scenario might be a certain regulatory requirement. So if we know that it's a certain regulatory strategy required for a specific release, we would like to have a typical template for that regulatory strategy. So when a project manager, for example, is setting up the project, he or she is prompted for questions on the regulatory strategy, and depending on that strategy, she will receive a certain set of predefined tasks to make sure that we get the deliverables we need to meet that regulatory strategy. If that strategy is changed later on in development, that is fine, but this is the starting off set of tasks which are required for that specific purpose. Of course, if it's a new product introduction, it will have a standard stage gate process and the phases and gates for that. If it's a discontinuation project, which serves the purpose of discontinuing a product, it will have a totally different set of tasks. But the essence is to set up predefined product templates for different kinds of projects and provide that to your project development leads. What the project lead first does is to review the tasks if it's all of them are relevant, if there are additional tasks required, and then she will try that project plan towards different pools of resources within the organization. The project template will define what kind of roles are required and what kind of skills are required. But it's up to each and every project manager to assign those and populate them and select the team and the people who will actually do the work. So project manager, perhaps together with the team, will go through the task, agree to them, and then the project will be launched. When launched, all the different, we're going to number 3 here, all the different tasks, one after another, will be launched and sent out to the person who is supposed to do the work. So it might, if it's a design task, reviewing and setting up, creating design input, the design engineer will receive that task, receive with that task a checklist, which has to be checked. We'll receive a template for setting up the design and can decide, should I use that template, yes or no? And then works, set up the design in SolidWorks or CATIA, whatever it might be, completes the work, files the deliverable, checks it in. Automatically, it will be filed for whatever category of design input it is, and it will be sent off for approval. So it goes to the design lead. Design lead can agree or disagree. And with signature, he or she will approve the design. And when done, it's finally released, and the design history file is updated with the relevant design input. And this is the way tasks will be performed all through the development project up until final review, which might be the preparation before a stage review or the actual gate review in itself. So this is how we build in compliance in this example with regards to the deliverables and the design history file, and how we build that into the development project. And this is one way of many to bridge innovation and compliance and to build compliance into our designs. Next example is a quality process. So it's a cross-functional process starting off with a complaints creation. That might be done in a CRM system or something, a tool or software located out in our closer to our patients. There are many different ways to capture that input. But what's important is that a quality lead within the product development organization will do the initial investigation and determine is a detailed investigation required, sending it off to different resources within the design engineering team. The safety or the regulatory lead within the organization needs to be prepared and have a prepared analysis for an event report. So she will need the proper tools for trending, making the decision if to launch a COPPA request. When I have a COPPA request, I want to send that off, depending on who I am, and I want to send it over to a program manager for approval to make sure that we have the resources and timing to launch a full-fledged COPPA analysis. When approved, it sends to the organization and the work is distributed to the appropriate team, typical cross-functional team, and they will be responsible for the risk analysis, the action plan, and the root cause analysis. And the essence here is to have access to the complete product referential, all the IP, all the drawings, the details on the actual design when you're working with a COPPA, and you have that together with a COPPA. So whenever I'm adding my tasks and I complete my actions to the COPPA, I can see that reflected in the deliverables directly in my PLM system. I can also flag this one for completion, and with that I can send away my COPPA for final approval by the quality lead, which also will determine the efficiency of the COPPA, and in the end close the complaint and feedback that information to whoever launched it from the start. So that's really the main essence of keeping quality processes, typically cross-functional process where you rely on a lot of product information and you want to have that stored together with your COPPA so you can clearly see the decisions made and how it affected any ongoing product design or any ongoing project, development project. So how does PLM then bridge innovation and compliance? I've showed you examples of how this might be done, and a lot of them are related to the fact that we store our deliverables when the designs are made, connected to a product development project, and the deliverables are typed when they're stored, so they're automatically added to the DHF. That adds a lot to the traceability all through the development. But this also enables us to do a lot of other things and reuse this information to determine compliance status. If I summarize the different ways we're building compliance within PLM to support quality assurance or compliance, there are many different ways these are done. And I don't want to, at this point, go into all the details. Bear in mind, the essence of what we're doing here is not so much bridging compliance and innovation. That's more the essence of what's happening in the organization when the product development team is speaking to the QA team and the regulatory team. But rather what we do is we're building compliance through product development. So through the daily work of a design engineer, a product engineer, a component engineer, whoever it is in our organization, when they're storing their information, without doing any additional work, we're also typing that information and checking it for compliance. Are we in line with compliance rules, regulations, regulatory areas? And we do that from scratch. And we also make that information available to downstream processes, such as the buildup of the dossier, such as the CAPA processes, such as device risk management analysis. So if I go through the different ways we build in compliance through PLM, I could summarize them in different areas. If we look at the first one, it's expressed as one measure. It's one repository fed by automated processes with change control and audit trail. Just by that, it's 4 different measures to be compliant. It's one repository, which means that everyone is looking at the same information. It's automated processes, which is a way to guarantee that we're following the procedures and the SOPs. It's change control, which means that we have control of the changes we make. We define what are the affected items and how will they be changed. And the 4th item, the audit trail. Whatever we do is traced. So whatever we do will be reported, and there's no way we can change that, which give us an accurate Part 11 compliant audit trail on whatever we do in product development. And this is one important cornerstone for compliancy with PLM for device development. Then we have the whole structure of information, finding the right traceable level, typing it correctly, having the life cycle so that the right people can access the information, the formal approval, and different triggers to make sure that all attributes have been filled in, etc. This is more standard PLM reasoning and functionality, but it's also really relevant and an essence for compliance for device development. And then we have the traceability aspect, where we'll create a red thread from initial requirements. It might be regulatory requirements, it might be marketing requirements or market requirements, it might be claims, but we need to be able to connect those to type tests or final validation. And there are several other measures. I won't go into all of them right now, but as mentioned, this session today is the first session in a webinar series, and we'll cover all aspects of these as part of the series. Another way to view compliance is to compare the functionality we have today in this suite, License to Cure, and compare it with the basic requirements we are to fulfill to be compliant. And of course, for a device development organization, the most important regulations are the FDA requirements, 80/20/30, so the QSR requirements, the ISO 9000 requirements, which is a reflection of those, but here in Europe, of course, the ISO 13485 requirements. And if we have a look at section 7 of that requirement, or the QSR requirements, we can have a deeper look at section C and D, which stress the design input and design output. And we can do this analysis on any part of the QSR and drill down into the details and map it with the functionality of the Novia or the License to Cure suite. Excuse me. So, if we look at design input and design output, and we look at the paragraph A2030C, it clearly states, each manufacturer shall establish and maintain procedures to ensure that the design requirements relating to a device are appropriate and address the intended use of the device, including the needs of the user and patient. Looking at the 13485 statement, the organization, it's section 721. It states the organization shall determine that A, requirements specified by the customer, including the requirements for delivery and post-delivery activities, are met. Requirements not stated by the customer but necessary for specified or intended use were known. Statutory and regulatory requirements related to the product, and any additional requirement determined by the organization. If we look at the License to Cure functionality, in this case, it's the module for traceable requirements management. We have a requirement which we have imported into our PLM environment. We always have them connected to the functional specification, or the RSP, and its version. It's always connected to the parent product it's related to. And it's connected to a use case and a test case, which guarantees that we always have those links, and we can always at any point in time see how are they fulfilled and are they met, what's their current status. Continuing through that, the A2030C also states that we should have a mechanism to address incomplete, ambiguous, or conflicting requirements. And 13485 have something similar. So there it states design and development inputs. Inputs relating to product requirements shall be determined and records maintained. These inputs shall include functional, performance, safety requirements according to intended use, etc. So also here it states requirements shall be complete, unambiguous, and not in conflict with each other. This reflected in License to Cure. Whenever we have a requirement, we can review it, and if it's clear, we have to make a statement. We have to determine, is it approved, is it rejected, how are we to treat it, and whatever we define here requires potentially a comment, and that comment will be stored in the system. So in this way we build up the traceability on requirements, and this is then automatically relating back to the QSR and the requirement for 13485 to make sure that we meet these requirements on design input and outputs. And in this way it continues. If we look at the view we had before in the stage gate, in every gate we see what are the deliverables and where is the status of the project delivering the completeness of the DHF elements. At any point in time we can see what's the approval status, and we can see who reviewed the approvals, what was the person behind that approval, and what was the statement. So it gives us very good visibility and traceability in ongoing projects, which means we're audit ready already when we are executing the project. And we have that with us all through the life cycle of a product, all through our stage gate project. So in that way it continues, and I won't go into each and every paragraph. If of interest, please contact us, and we'll provide you with a complete set of paragraphs for European legislation, for US legislation or the QSR, and the functionality in license secure, so you can understand how it's mapped, why it's mapped, and why we're building in compliance into PLM through introducing license secure. So feel free to send the question. Contact details will be received before we're closing the session. So a common question is, does it matter then for us? We're a small biotech company, we're just started, how is this relevant to us? Or we're a mid-sized class 1 development organization. We've just completed our 13485. We're doing pretty well with Excel. Why would this matter to us? A common statement on PLM in different life science organizations are the following. So the first one from Beckman Coulter, one of the larger device or diagnostic companies based or headquarters in the US. Key enabler for our ability to manage and integrate change in a rapidly evolving company. Statement from a Nordic company, in this case it's a pharmaceutical generics company. PLM for us is about managing the complexity of our business in the most cost-efficient way. Third statement is from Steve McCarthy at Johnson & Johnson. Our business and world is changing and we have to keep pace, so PLM is our main tool allowing us to manage that change. So they're all stressing complexity of business, they're all stressing change and how to deal with that change. And this is really the essence here, to keep track on change and make sure that we are compliant at any point in time, or at least that we understand, are we compliant or not, and what's the reason to why we're not compliant, so that we swiftly can allocate our resources and act upon that and deal with that if required. So that's the common thing. Some effects, as you can see here. I'm not saying that every effect or product effect is relevant for your organization, but this is typically what's addressed. And these are actual numbers from actual implementations over the last few years in device development implementations, or PLM of device development implementations of the organizations of different sizes. But it's typically addressing product recalls. It's typically addressing time spent in responding to information requests, or preparing approvals, or completing release of products. It's often targeting engineering change to improve engineering change throughput, or equivalent with that, reducing time in product development, or reducing time searching for information relevant for our product development lead time. More details on these numbers and what's behind those in a white paper, which you can request from us, and we will mail it out to you. It's called Bridging the Gap Between Innovation and Compliance, and it goes into the more on the details on why are we addressing compliance with PLM. But the actual implementation, the actual scope is unique for each and every organization. So for the different organizations here in the Nordics, for example, if it's Elekta or Mölnlycke Healthcare or GE Healthcare or Philips or Orion Pharma, their implementation, scope of implementations, all of them are of course related to product and product development, but the actual scope of implementations differs substantially. And that's because they have different drivers motivating the functionality, but also, of course, also because they have different products and different development organizations and different sizes. Point of departure for most organizations is to have control on your products and the documents, the control and documents for those products, often expressed as the DMR. So it's actually control on the conceptual BOM, the EBOM, the MBOM, and the DMR, and the change for that. So that is really what everything builds upon. And the document controls required for determining if it's an effective change in information. So we need to keep track on our work instructions, our SOPs, and our training records to be able to determine if a particular product change has been released or can be released. Also, if you're a small organization, you might start just working on the European market, and then yes, you need to have control of your products and the relevant documentation, but you also need to keep track on your PMS, your post-market surveillance. The possibility to determine complaints trending, determine what should be reported, and make sure that that's reported to a regulatory authority. So that's really the absolute basic point of departure for any device development organization. Then, of course, quite early, you might want to keep control on your CAD vault and CAD data, if that's part of your control document, or to extent it's part of your control document. But the basic product information with documentation is an earlier requirement. When you start to pick up in size, you want to address additional markets, and with that you get the complete QSR requirements, and with that you might have a larger development organization. If you have a larger development organization, you want to have that traceability, and with that comes the design controls and the automatic buildup of DHF, because it becomes very cumbersome to try to manage that manually. With that, you also have the quality processes, COPPA, MCR, complaints, audits, supplier audits. So you want to build those into your backbone in one way or another. And you will have a buildup of your technical file and the UDI reporting to connect with your DHF, and that's manageable if you have good design controls and good control of your deliverables in your product development setup. And from that on, if you have that established, you just add additional functionality. It might be to see the exact product compliance status at any point in time, the exact materials compliance status at any point in time, connect your 510K submissions to directly to the system, perform more advanced risk management analysis connected to your products. So your FMECA or FMECA is connected to your risks and your risk mitigations to your change. So you get full traceability through from risks back to validation, back to your change, back to your product, and perhaps your prototypes. I won't go into all the details on all the parts, how it's built in, but as mentioned, this is the first session. That was this introduction today, November 4. All through the autumn, winter, and spring, we will run additional sessions. So already next week, we'll go into depth about the design controls and how it's connected to, potentially connected to CAD and other information and deliverables generated all through the development project. After that, we'll follow on with the requirements for QSR, addressing the quality processes of COPPA, complaints, and audits. After that, we will address regulatory filing and UDI. And that's also, if you happen to be in Sweden at the time, some days earlier on November 20th, you can visit the regulatory forum, which it takes place here in Stockholm. Then you can meet us live for a live introduction to the regulatory filing and the UDI functionality. And that's what we'll manage before Christmas. We'll have a longer Christmas break, and we're then starting off early in next year. As you probably know, there is a 13485 recast coming up, and this will impact PLM and the functionality we're implementing in PLM. So that will give a summary on that functionality and good examples how it's addressing, for example, UDI, but other aspects as well, such as supplier analysis and suppliers as part of PLM, but also other aspects such as additional functionality for traceability all through the supply chain. End of January, we'll touch upon the requirements traceability, of course addressing test traceability, but also regulatory traceability. Then we'll revisit the control documents. And then later in the spring, we'll go into depth about compliance status. How do we determine materials compliance status? Or how do we determine product compliance status, which is, for example, the status of CE mark at any point in time? Do we have the relevant critical component list populated? Do we have the relevant test records assembled from our supply chain or from our internal tests? And do we have the relevant certificates requested and approved so that we at any point in time can say that we are compliant? So with that, I'll give a few minutes for Q&As. We will see if there are any questions filed. And there are no public questions at the time being, at least not visible to me. I've seen some separate questions sent via email. Okay. If you have additional questions, you see my contact details on display, and feel free to give me a call or drop me an email and send additional questions. But if there are no additional questions, I'll close the Q&A, and I will once more highlight that this session is recorded, so please feel free to revisit this session at any point in time. Also, it will be available on our website, so you can download it or you can send a link to colleagues. And if we haven't any possibility to meet before November 20th, we invite you to the regulatory forum, which is co-arranged with the Swedish MedTech, the med device industry session, which is coordinating the event for the Nordic medical device industry. Okay, with this, I thank you very much, and I'm closing this session. Thank you.